Hello and welcome. In this video we're going to look at another advanced use of awk, and that is putting awk commands in script files. So we're going to continue to build on the functionality of what you've learned with awk by just taking our instructions out of our command line, storing them in a file. What I'm going to cover here does assume you're already somewhat familiar with the awk command. In particular, some advanced things like being able to give multiple expressions to awk and multiple instructions per expression. If you're not familiar with those, I already have videos on those published, so do feel free to go check those out and then come back. What you'll notice as you start writing more complicated awk files to do complex things is your command line will become a little bit cumbersome. Just like as you started to write scripts. You could potentially write them on the command line, but if you want to be able to reuse them, putting them in a file makes a lot more sense. Additionally, if you're putting your awk command and calling it from some other language's script, it will be much easier to take the awk instructions and even store those in a completely separate file, so we don't have to worry about any conflicting syntax between awk and the scripting language that you're calling from. So instead of typing it in the command line, we just place them in a separate file and then use the option -f to tell awk to call that file. So we could awk -f forward report cars.txt, and inside that forward report file we would just put our awk expressions without the single quotes that we normally wrap around them. Let's see a couple of examples of that. Oh, you can tell which video I was just doing. Awk file 1. I could have sworn that's what it's called. Oh, capital F on file. So it's just a simple file, and all I've done is take each expression and write it on a line on its own. So if we find the word Chevy in the line, we'll print the first and third fields. If we find Ford, we also print the first and third fields. And I could call this with awk-f, awk file 1, and still give it cars.txt. This way, I don't have to manually retype those awk instructions every time I want to call it. I have them in a file, and I am just telling awk, run that file. And as it reads through the source file, when it found Chevy or Ford, it just printed the first and third fields. Of course, this was quite simple. I was just doing a print as each instruction. You can do multiple instructions in your awk expressions when you put them in the file. So in my first expression, I'm now, when I find Chevy, printing the first and third field, and for lack of something better to do, I'm just printing out the word, or the words, multi-line instructions. I realize as I do that there's a syntax thing that I could have done slightly better there that I will fix in a second, but all we would do is say awk-f that file, and now when it sees, in this case Chevy, it prints fields 1 and 3, and it prints out multi-line instructions. When it sees Ford, it's still just printing fields 1 and 3. What I was saying that I could do slightly better is just a syntax thing to make sure awk doesn't get confused at all. On the end of your instructions, throw in a semicolon so it knows it's the end of the line. Awk didn't complain about what I had, but it's just slightly better to have that semicolon in, so you're explicitly saying this is the end of the line. Just a warning about the expressions you put in your files. You can make that expression take up multiple lines, but your condition and the curly brace that goes with that condition that opens up your instruction have to be on the same line. This is one awk expression, one condition, with an instruction that goes with that condition. This is two expressions. You may recall awk has a default instruction if you don't give one, and it has a default condition if you don't give one. So it would read this as being one expression on its own. When you find a record that matches this regular expression, print the whole line, and this would be read as a completely separate instruction or completely separate expression for every record. Do whatever this instruction is. Whereas up here, it's when you match this regular expression, do this. I do have a couple of files that demonstrate that. So in this case, anytime we see Chevy, it's going to print the whole record. And for every record, it's going to print the first and third fields and print multi-line instructions. And anytime it sees Ford, it will print fields 1 and 3. So let's call that. And this is just a massive output. So when we saw that line that was Plymouth, okay, it doesn't match this, but for every record we print the first and third field and then print multi-line instructions. And then that Plymouth Fury doesn't match Ford, so that does nothing. But then we have a Chevy Nova. So it sees Chevy, it prints the whole record. And then it goes to this totally separate expression and says, okay, print the first and third field and print multi-line instructions. And then it's not a Ford, so we don't do that. But if we do see the ones with Ford, we see the first and third field twice. One from the expression that matches every record, one from the expression that just deals with Fords. To make that awk file better, we would actually use awk file 4, where the curly brace that opens up that instruction is on the same line as the expression. And then, yes, our output is still semi-nonsensical because I didn't really do anything useful in those instructions, but it's a lot less cluttered. So what we've looked at in this lesson is just a quick example of a very useful feature for the awk command, is the ability to take our instructions and put them in a file. This way we can take these awk commands that we're typing and, well, we can do like I just did on the command line here. I have the awk instruction, the expressions saved, and I can just recall them whenever I need to instead of having to manually type them again. Better yet, if I'm calling awk from some other scripting language, which I'll do in the next video and demonstrate this there, you won't have to worry about any conflicting syntax between awk and that scripting language, because all of your awk stuff is in a completely separate file, and from that scripting language you are just telling it, read this file. Again, that'll be a little bit clearer in the next video. So I'll see you there.